Hello, welcome to Right Start, an equipping module for the Staff Parish Relations Committee. This is part number 1, and I am Blake Bradford. I'm the Northwest District Superintendent and Dean of the Cabinet. I'm also the author of a couple of books, including Impact, Reclaiming the Call of Lay Ministry, which we will be using as part of this set of seminars, this set of modules for your staff parish committee. I want to let you know that all the resources I'm going to be talking about are going to be downloadable on the webpage indicated here on the slide, including this entire slideshow. It's all going to be downloaded PDF along with other resources. So that website there is available for your staff parish to give you the tools you need to give your new pastor the right start. I want to begin today by saying that this is the first of 3 sessions. And the first piece I want to share about is that the Staff Parish Committee, of course, has a very unique relationship in a pastoral transition. And you all know the job of the Staff Parish Committee. It's well defined and the discipline. We actually have a whole nother training video that I did just for staff parishes, general work that you do throughout the year. And so I encourage you to check that out, and we'll repeat just a little bit of it. Most of this in today's session really is about the right start and this receiving a new pastor. So we're going to focus more on that piece of it. And of course, the staff parish does relate to the church council and the charge conference. It is the personnel committee of the church, and it has a lot of different duties. But the ones I wanted to focus on are the first 2 right here. Encourage and support the pastor, staff, and families, and confer, consult, and counsel with pastors and staff on relationships with the congregation and priorities and skills and goals. Really, we're talking in this session about when you're receiving a new pastor, when you're saying goodbye and you're saying hello to your clergy, how do you encourage and support them? And how do you get them started out well as in relationships, building up the body of Christ, and also reaching out in the community, making a difference, an impact to those communities that we are all called to serve as disciples of Jesus. One of the things that your staff parish is going to be responsible for is keeping apprised of some certain policies around clergy. First of all, there's the Book of Discipline Rules on the Function of the Staff Parish and the Role of the Pastor. I got my Book of Discipline right back here. I hope you as a staff parish have one as well, and you can use that throughout the year. But being really clear what your job is, especially in this transition. There's some compensation rules around in the Book of Discipline and in our Arkansas conference. There's minimum leave for vacation and continuing ed, parsonage standards, and rules about minimum compensation and salary arrearage. These are all things your pastor parish committee needs to be aware of. These policies do exist, and you're responsible for working with your outgoing and your incoming pastor to make sure that for these policies are being followed. Now, the first thing we're going to do here, though, is I'm going to ask you to pause the video in just a moment. And in your staff parish committee, if you're watching this video all together, ask yourself this question. If you're by yourself and we're doing this asynchronous and you're studying at home before later conversation, think about this question, hit pause, think about this question, these questions here, and then maybe share them at the next meeting. So let me share the questions verbally, and then I encourage you to pause the video. Number 1, what are the congregation's history and record of pastoral moves? What worked well or poorly during the last few clergy transitions? I encourage you to pause your video for a moment right there. Next up, we're going to be covering over this Right Start curriculum, these training modules, several different expectations. And these are expectations for you all as the Staff Parish Relations Committee. So expectation number 1 is to say goodbye well. And let me read this quote. And this quote comes from Impact, a book I wrote a few years back with Keikotan. A transition is the time of simultaneously saying goodbye and saying hello. As laity, we need to remember that just as we're going through all of our own emotions during the pastoral transition, the incoming and outgoing pastors are also going through their own stressful journeys of saying goodbye and saying hello. How we say goodbye to an existing pastor says a lot about us as a congregation. And I think about that saying goodbye moment, and it is hard. It really is. There's a movie from years ago, Keanu Reeves, called Speed, and the idea was there was a bomb on a bus, and the bus couldn't go below a certain speed, or it would all blow up. And they had it. The scene. I'm going to let you in on a spoiler here. They had to transfer from one bus to another, all the passengers, while the bus was moving. In so many ways, that's what a clergy transition feels like for everybody involved. You're on two speeding buses, you're trying to move from one to the other, and you know, it's hard to do this, and it's hard for pastors and laity both to figure this out, because there's a lot of going on in the different relationships in the congregation, and leaving, and there's family issues, and there's missing what was home for a season, and there's a lot going on. So the main thing I want to say here is, how can you say goodbye with grace? How can you say goodbye with grace? So let's focus on this saying goodbye well. First of all, I hope that you are praying for your pastors, both the current pastor who is outgoing and your incoming pastor. How are you praying for them? Are you praying specifically for, if you ask them, how can I pray for you? And pray specifically for that. Just bathe this whole process in prayer. And I think if we start with prayer, then we can work at approaching the whole goodbye and hello time with a huge amount of seeking God's grace. First of all, how we celebrating the pastor's leadership, how you mark in the ending. It may be in worship. We have things like batons we pass, or maybe laying the stole at the altar table, or there's different ways to go about celebrating the pastor's leadership and marking the ending. It could be pictures and photo reels of great times that you've had with the pastor who's leaving. Just different ways to celebrate his or her ministry. Next up, as staff parish committee, you need to help the whole congregation grieve. There's going to be some folks in there that really, that pastor is maybe the one that walked them through some really dark times or some huge celebrations in their family's life. How can you help your whole congregation grieve in the midst of transition? And of course, one way is be honest about the change. Be honest. Yeah, this is hard. Be realistic about it. There's also a couple of practical things you can do. Get up to date on the bills, the conference tithe, which is what we used to call apportionments, records, getting up to date on all that. So the new pastor is able to arrive and not have that sort of hanging over her or him. Another piece there, now I wrote that as one of the other bullet points, is to encourage healthy boundaries, because the outgoing pastor's relationship with the church is changing pretty dramatically. They're becoming from the pastor to the former pastor. And as part of that, there are certain expectations. We have a pastoral transition covenant, and you can find that again on that website. And there are expectations there that we don't invite clergy back to lead funerals or weddings, to visit the sick, or do other pastoral functions. It's in a staff parish. It is your job to enforce this covenant. Don't lay it all on the incoming pastor to deal with situations about folks trying to invite the former pastor back for things. Your new pastor needs to be the one, for instance, to be by the bedside saying a prayer for someone in their last moments, needs to be there with a family during weddings and funerals and baptisms, these moments of the transitions of life. If you don't let your new pastor get involved in these ways, then you're never going to get connected to your new pastor. And it holds back the congregation from the future that God has for it. And so that is why back in 2014, the Order of Elders approved a pastoral transition covenant where we say we don't want to come back. We're not gonna say yes. And I know folks have done it, and that really is not helpful. So I want you as staff parish to really encourage the congregation to just love that former pastor out the door, that you can always think of them as your friend, but they're no longer your clergy leader, your pastor, and let your new pastor be the pastor. And so this pastoral transition covenant is online along with the other resources. And this is something that you'll want to help communicate, maybe not so much in rules, but understand the why and help communicate all of this to the congregation as it is seeking to live into this transition well and be able to say goodbye well. So I've got some more questions for you. And then after this, we're going to pause this video and then stop this one, and we'll start a module number 2. And so, but let me get started here by sharing these verbally, and then you can hit pause. How can you and your fellow board members, you all the staff parish, model a healthy pastoral transition for the rest of the congregation? And second, how will you communicate that the former pastor will not be coming back for pastoral functions, so situations will not be dropped into the lap of the incoming pastor? And of course, what I mean by situations there is uncomfortable situations where people are asking the former pastor to come back for pastoral functions. That's, again, not helpful. So how do you communicate that? I invite you to hit pause on your video for a moment, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so that is the first module for Right Start, an equipping module for Staff Parish Relations Committee. I invite you to now to join me for part number 2, and that will be on the same website. Thank you.